If you'd like to join the program, the local number's 602-277-5369 or toll free 1-866-536-1100. Okay, Sahar, I think we probably beat the technology component of this to death. Why don't we talk about communication?
Sure.
Motivation for the different generations.
Okay. The motivation, each generation has its own motivation message. Like, for instance, the matures always likes to be valued for their experience and always like to be reminded that their experience is very well respected. The baby boomers always like to hear you're valued and you're needed. The Generation X, to motivate them, you tell them, okay, this is a project, do it your way, forget about the rules. And if you want to motivate the Generation Y, you tell them, you know what, you're going to be working with very bright people. Like, for instance, in the culture in Google, where they have, it's basically a big space where all young people work together just to brainstorm and bring new innovative ideas for Google. The communication styles are different, definitely. The matures are the formal, everything about the matures or the traditional is traditional. Is like the formal through proper channels like memos and all that. The Generation X is, the baby boomers are somewhat also formal. They're very structured. They prefer face-to-face communication. And they also believe in meetings after meetings after meetings. Came Generation X that doesn't really believe in wasting time. They do respect the values, but they are also, remember, skeptical and cynical because of the way they grew up.
Well, it's because we were all latchkey kids, right?
Exactly. And it's not only that, they saw that basically what the companies or the organization where the baby boomers were their fathers and their grandfathers or their parents and their grandparents worked for at the end wasn't as loyal to them as they were to them. So basically for them, and that's why also almost every 3 years the Generation X has a tendency to look for another job or for another place to work.
Right.
And for them, go ahead.
Sahar, we've got a caller. Joel would like to ask some Generation Y questions.
Sure.
Hey, Sahar.
Hi.
Joel.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. I have a question. Do you think the Generation Y people at work will have trouble communicating because they use texting and SMS so much when they're working together in meetings? They won't be able to do it as easily as the previous generations because to them it's just text, 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 bye, text, text. And so have they actually lost that face-to-face skill?
No, they did not lose the face-to-face skill. And yes, it will be a challenge, but it does have solutions. And we're going to be talking about the solutions before the end of the program. It's going to be a challenge, but there is always training, there is a compromise where everybody can come to the middle, where they can exchange their skills, their experiences. And you know what? Some of the other generations, well, Generation X is okay with texting, but where baby boomers are going to have to get used to the idea that they might use some texting as well, or emails, and that
Sahar, I've got to be on Joel's side on this one, because I'm part of the baby boomer thing, and it drives me absolutely nuts when I see the Generation Y folks texting back and forth in my project meetings.
You know what, can I ask you something? What did your grandfather told you when you were growing up?
He didn't say much. He usually boxed my ears when it was basically, what do you mean, what did he tell me?
We need to give them a chance. Each generation always tells the younger generation that they have it easier than they did. That they don't get it because they're young. And that's why we need to give them a chance. And they will come through because they have a lot of skills to offer.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Joe?
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So to Joe's point, let's talk about the advantages and challenges to each one of these.
Of Of course. Can I add to the humor that you started in the beginning of the show?
Oh, absolutely. Please, God, bring some humor.
Well, you know what? To kind of understand the generation gap, it's just a humor example. If you ask 3 generations, like or the 4 generations, like the matures, the baby boomer, Generation X, and Generation Y, who what they know about Kennedy, or how did Kennedy die? You know, you will have the matures and the baby boomers that will tell you that he was shot in Dallas, Texas. You will have Generation X that probably will answer you it was a plane accident by Martha's Vineyard. And
yeah, good point.
You know, and you might have Generation Y that will ask you Kennedy who.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so this is part of the challenges that we go through. You know, it's the eras that each generation grew up in. You can also imagine another example is like if you are at a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner or a Rosh Hashanah dinner, you know, and you have the grandparents, the parents, and the kids sitting on the same table. Right. How long it's gonna take till you see eyes rolling?
Well, you know that's interesting, and I know it's not a topic for what we're talking about tonight, but there's a tremendous amount of wisdom when you sit here and look at your dates. From one, you know, from matures to baby boomers to X to Y. And it really kind of strikes me as kind of sad that we haven't found a way to pass a lot of that history and tradition on to where we don't just get the eyes rolling. You know what I mean?
Yes, because, you know what, remember, it's our responsibility as older generations. So we cannot... What I see is that there are a lot of blame towards Generation Y. That they don't have ethics at work, they don't work enough, they are spoiled, they are narcissistic, and I don't think that this is necessarily the truth.
Well, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think so either. But, yeah, and you can hear the butt monkey going on.
I'm waiting.
But I do think they still harbor some responsibility around it.
We need to show them the way, Dave.
Yeah, well,
you know,
I agree with you there.
We need to show them the way. You know, it's our responsibility to reach out. Because remember, the oldest generation goes to a point where, you know what, I have grandkids your age. You know, or you can't understand because you didn't go through that. You're too young to understand that. How many times do we hear that? How many times we heard it growing up?
Oh, yeah.
We were never good for our parents, or I don't mean never good, but I mean in certain issues, we were not good enough for the parents or for the grandparents because they always thought we were young and just couldn't understand. And it's not fair to pass that to Generation Y. We suffered from it. We shouldn't put it on them. We should help them.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think what we need to do is filter some of that because you know, when you look back on it, and I agree with you, it was a different time and the upbringing was different, but there was a lot of value hidden in little nuggets in there that when you kind of scrape away all the stuff and kind of get down to the nuggets, I think it's our responsibility to pass those nuggets on.
I agree. And remember, it's all about tolerance and respect. Age is again a character of diversity. You know, diversity is race, ethnicity, religion, and age is included in that.
Right.
So it's always tolerance, respect, open dialogue, open communication.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the generational gap challenges then.
Sure. The generation gap can cause some problems at work. It can cause problems from recruiting to finding talents to building teams, you know, and all that. The problem that we're going to have in the next few years, according to the labor statistics, is that nearly 80 million baby boomer will exit the workplace in the next decade. And there is not...
That many?
Yes.
Wow.
And there is not... And you know, remember, the number of baby boomers was big, and then the birth rate declined in Generation X, if we remember that. So the number of people that are going to go out of the workplace market as baby boomers will not necessarily be replaced all by Generation X, because there are not going to be enough numbers.
Okay.
So that's why we need to start training Gen Y to replace some of these positions.
Okay.
And we need also to remember that we need to retain everybody with talent that we have, because it takes a lot of money to retrain people.
Right.
You know, and it's not only that, people take between 18 to 24 months to be really competent in the place they work.
That's an interesting point, and one that I think you and I are going to have on another show.
Okay.
But I don't think there's enough emphasis put on that component of an employee in today's environment.
Yes.
And to your point, it takes 18 to 24
months, yes.
Right. Plus, I don't know that you, in some cases, I don't know that you ever can recover the historical information when you lose a valued employee.
I agree. It's talent retention, and it's not only, you know. Remember also the older generation has a tendency to keep all the informations in their head, so they need to start. And this is what we were talking about before. They need to start learning to pass it on.
Okay, we'll talk about the strategies and solutions when we come back after the break. I'm Dave Campbell, CEO of Campbell Management Consulting. More with Sahar Andrade on Workplace Generation Gap. You're tuned into Clarity from Chaos on KFNX, News Talk Radio 1100. A large majority of IT projects fail to meet deadlines or run grossly over budget.